Want to bring our panel now to discuss more. Peter Baker, chief White House correspondent for the New York Times, Emily Tish Sussman, Democratic strategist and host of your Presidential Playlist podcast, and Tim Miller, director of Republican Voters Against Trump and contributor to The Bulwark. Welcome to you all, guys. Thanks for joining me on this. Peter, I want to start with you on this one, and I want to pick up where I left off with Frank, and that is the strike on the Iranian nuclear scientist inside Iran's borders. How do you think this is going to complicate things when it comes to the Biden administration wanting to re-enter some sort of Iran nuclear deal heading into his administration?
Well, clearly it puts things in a different light than the President-elect Biden had expected when he will take office on January 20th. It creates raw feelings. It obviously undermines, the possibility of a rapprochement. On the other hand, I mean, you could play out an alternative scenario. You play out an alternative scenario where Trump, in some ways, did Biden a favor because this happened on his watch. The Iranians aren't going to blame Biden for it. He can come in and say, look, let's time to turn the page and move beyond Trump-style confrontation and get something closer to the 2015 agreement back on the table and moving again. I think that Biden has the opportunity to be, a fresh voice in this conversation because, in fact, the Iranians don't attach Trump actions to him. But we don't know. It's a complicated scenario, and the Iranians aren't exactly the most transparent, regime in the world, and how they're going to see this and what they might do in retaliation these next 50 days will obviously scramble the equation.
Emily, let's talk election here for a moment. Let's move on from Iran at this point and talk election. And the president's still tweeting about it. He tweeted about it 20 minutes ago or so. He talked about the number of ballots. The campaign is challenging in Pennsylvania is far larger than the 81,000 vote margin. It's not even close. Fraud and illegality are a big part of the case. Documents being completed. We will appeal. No evidence of anything that the president is saying in this tweet. No evidence of any of his tweets, anything that he has said in any of his tweets since November 3rd at this point. It seems as if, and I've been saying this over and over again, like he's shouting into this void. He lost some major legal battles over the weekend, a complete rebuke from a Pennsylvania judge there who was appointed by Trump himself. And then he had that really interesting exchange with reporters on Thanksgiving as well, where he began to attack reporters. Jeff Mason, actually, who I spoke to just yesterday, and his attack of Jeff Mason in that call. What do you make of some of the latest developments we've been seeing so far on the election front?
I'm flattered that you think that I can assign reason to many of the things that the president is doing. I am not that smart. But I mean, I do think that we are seeing his unraveling. Like, he doesn't know, he doesn't have the emotional capacity, he doesn't have the emotional intelligence to be able to say, okay, I lost, the American people spoke, and now it's time to move on. So he's doing what he actually does know, which is to double down. And unfortunately, there is a large percentage of the country who supports him and is now conditioned to believe what he says exclusively. What no one else says matters. There is really not another news source, surrogate, that can change their mind. And I know there's a lot of people, me included, who were hoping that a lot of very important Republicans would come out and start saying, this is ridiculous, he lost the election, it's time to move on. And some have, I'd say, really not enough. But I also don't know how much it matters. The people that really, really, truly support him just believe him. There's really no one else they can believe. And so Republicans truly have to make a choice at this point. Are they going to continue into the Biden presidency, believing that that he is an illegitimate president? Like, especially elected Republicans really need to start making that choice. And it's going to hurt them when they're running for the two runoff seats in Georgia for the Senate, because they have to actually acknowledge what is going on if they're going to talk about the balance of power.
I want to talk about Biden cabinet picks for a moment, but before we get to that, Tim, I do want to play some of that sound that I was referring to, where it seemed as if the president got really testy with Jeff Mason. Let's play that and then have you react.
Just to be clear, if the Electoral College votes for Joe Biden, will you concede?
Well, if they do, they made a mistake, because this election was a fraud. Just so you understand, this election was a fraud.
If the Electoral College does elect President-elect Joe Biden, are you not going to leave this building?
Just so you, certainly I will. Certainly I will, and you know that. But I think that there will be a lot of things happening between now and the 20th. Between you people, don't talk to me that way. You're just a lightweight. Don't talk to me that way. I'm the president of the United States. Don't ever talk to the president that way.
I mean, Tim, it seems like an unraveling happening right before our eyes here.
I don't know. It seems like Donald Trump to me. It seems like the same childish brat that he's been since the 80s. But, you know, it is enraging to watch that. And because, look, he works for us, right? And this idea that we have to treat him like some king when he's lying to the American people and perpetrating a fraud and have some sort of respect for his lies is maddening and ridiculous. And, you know, look, he will leave. Folks don't have to worry about that. The legal cases are a disaster, but there are long-term repercussions here. And like Emily said, I don't know if you saw today, the chairman of the RNC, Romney McDaniel, was in Georgia today getting shouted down by voters saying, how can we trust our elections? Why aren't you fighting harder? You know, this is being stolen from us. This is being robbed. I mean, this is very dangerous for the long-term health of our democracy, and pretty much every Republican is going along with it in one way or the other, and it's going to create some severe long-term problems about the health of our democracy, even once we get a childish president out of the White House here in a few months.
So let me ask you a controversial question, and then I want to talk about Biden picks here. And I asked this of Joyce Vance a little bit earlier. There was an opinion piece written in NBCnews.com talking about whether or not the president could actually pardon himself. And they went on to ask a question as to whether or not Biden should actually pardon the president, if in fact it comes to that, as Ford did to Nixon. Where do you stand on this?
I don't think he should. I don't think he has any reason to. I mean, look, if anything, that Trump's biggest vulnerabilities from a legal standpoint probably come from state, tax laws and such, not federal laws that Biden could pardon him from anyway. It comes from New York AG and SDNY. So, no, I don't think that he should. It wasn't a good decision by Ford. It wasn't a good political decision. They were within the same party. I do think that Biden should try to move on and try to find a couple of Republicans who will be willing to work with him to get things done on the Hill. But I don't think there's any benefit to him in pardoning Trump. And I think, frankly, there's a lot we don't know about what the president has done in his private business that deserves serious scrutiny. He's not above the law.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear here. The argument being made in favor of pardoning Trump by Biden would be to bring the country together, considering the fact that 73 million Americans voted for Donald Trump. That was, of course, the author of this piece. Want to be clear there.
Yeah.
Peter Baker, let's talk about Biden appointments here. And there's a piece in the New York Times written by Michael Shear, Jonathan Martin. And in it, they say this: as he fills out the rest of his team in the days and weeks ahead, the task will become more complicated, forcing him to navigate tricky currents of ideology, gender, racial identity, party affiliation, friendship, competence, personal background, and past employment. There's this idea, and it goes on throughout the entire piece, that Biden's picks from the title of the piece could basically draw fire from both sides, not only from Republicans, but Democrats as well. One particular pick that he is considering, it seems, would be the Attorney General, right? And we've talked a lot about who the appointment of the Attorney General could actually be, considering where he may go when it comes to criminal justice, the criminal justice system in general, and how the Biden administration is going to be concentrating a lot in the criminal justice system. And a possible appointment could be Sally Yates, a close confidant of the former vice president and now president-elect. But we know Sally Yates is not going to be liked by a lot of Republicans, considering the fact that she didn't enforce the travel ban under the Trump presidency. What do you make of a possible pick like Sally Yates, and in general, the attention that's going to be paid to the pick of Attorney General by both Republicans and progressive Democrats?
Yeah, I think for starters, you're seeing that the Biden cabinet selection and transition is the polar opposite of what we saw with President Trump 4 years ago, right? 4 years ago, President Trump narrowed his pool of applicants by ruling out anybody like Tim who didn't stand for him during the election of 2016. He wiped out an entire class of Republican talent that could have come in to work for him. Some of them wanted to come in to work for him out of patriotic belief that they should support him, even if they didn't vote for him. And yet the president narrowed his pool to almost, a very small band of people he'd consider to be loyal enough. In Biden's situation, you've got the opposite. You've got a wide coalition in the left, the middle, and even some people advocating Republicans being named to significant positions in order to, fulfill a broader coalition that this vice president and this president-elect has promised. And in terms of Attorney General specifically, Sally Yates obviously is a hero to a lot of Democrats because she did stand up as acting Attorney General to President Trump in those early days when she refused to go to court to defend the travel ban. She also was the one, of course, who went to the White House to inform them that Michael Flynn had lied to the FBI and to warn the White House about that. That's going to make, I think, any confirmation to be obviously pretty tough, probably among a lot of Republicans who will look at that through jaundiced eyes and portray her as part of a conspiracy by the outgoing Obama administration against President Trump. But, it's interesting. She would be, obviously, she has a lot of respect by certainly Democrats, but even a lot of Republican lawyers who know her background, her credentials, and her public service. So I think that she's still a viable candidate at this point, according to the Biden people.
What about Deval Patrick? What have you heard about the possibility of Deval Patrick being appointed Attorney General, Peter?
Yeah, Deval Patrick's interesting. Of course, he was the governor of Massachusetts and a former assistant attorney general in a previous Democratic administration, well respected, not just among Democrats, but even some Republicans. I was talking with a friend of President Trump's just the other day who said that he thought Deval Patrick would be probably the best attorney general he could pick. That may or may not be a compliment, obviously, coming from the Republican side, but this is a president-elect who does have to think about Republican confirmation. And so you can't just pick people that are going to satisfy people on the left, but you have to pick people who are going to be able to get through a very narrowly divided Senate, even if these two Georgia races were to go for the Democrats, which is, maybe a tough shot. He still has to contend with a 50-50 Senate with Kamala Harris being the tiebreaker. So that's not easy for any of these cabinet picks. Deval Patrick does have respect across the aisle. He probably could be a viable choice, too.
Emily, want to play for you some sound from Valerie Jarrett. She appeared on my colleague Ali Velshi show a little bit earlier today talking about Biden's cabinet picks.
The president-elect has selected people with extraordinary experience, a track record of leadership, subject matter expertise, and whose stories reflect the American story. We just could not ask for better people to meet the daunting challenges that lie ahead, and I'm confident that the rest of the cabinet will stay true to the commitment that President-elect Biden made about experience, people who believe in science and evidence, who have a track record of leadership.
And, as Peter said, Emily, what a change, according to Valerie, than what we saw 4 years ago and the cabinet picks when Donald Trump won the presidency.
Well, I mean, that's where I thought he was going. And the biggest difference between the Biden and the Trump administration is the level of experience. And look, nobody would know this better than Valerie Jarrett, who served as senior advisor to President Obama in the White House, because she's worked with them all. Everybody who Biden has named so far, everyone who's in the mix, are people that he's worked with before, have worked with for a long time, have massive amounts of government experience. So look, what we had heard from primary voters, Democratic primary voters all throughout the presidential primary is the number one question was electability, who could defeat Trump. And the biggest thing they wanted during the general was could Biden hit the ground running? Could he start on day one? And his experience definitely leads us to believe that he can start on day one. I think even with his relationship with Congress, a knock on him, I think, from some who want people in Congress to be elevated into these roles, is that he's unrealistic about how to make deals with the Congress today, because it's been a while since he's been in the Senate.
Right.
But I think that, one, they're not remembering that he actually, that was his primary role in the Obama administration, to work with Congress. But also, Senator Harris, Vice President-elect Harris, is coming right out of the Senate. She knows exactly what it's like. So they do know how to hit the ground running. I think there may be some attacks on both sides, but honestly, doesn't that mean that he's doing his job and he's bringing in a wide array of people? Something we've forgotten to expect during the Trump administration.
Yeah, but that is a criticism that I've heard over and over again, which is Washington is much different. Congress is much different than it was 4 years ago, and much more divided now. Peter Baker, Emily Tish Sussman, Tim Miller, thank you all, guys. Appreciate you joining me this afternoon.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.